Welcome to Stonewatch. This is the Retro Rewatch, and today we're checking out the 1989 classic, The Burbs. And if you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button and click on that bell so you can notify future videos. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And yes, after seeing this movie pop up several times on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it over the last few weeks, I decided to go back and revisit this 1989 classic, The Burbs, starring Tom Hanks, Carrie Fisher, Bruce Dern, and Corey Feldman, just to name a few. And man, I gotta say, I still love this movie. I mean, I had a really good time watching this movie. I mean, it was kind of weird to watch because, like, you know, again, it's 1989. There's like no cell phones around, but I do think I did catch a scene where Carrie Fisher was on a computer, which I thought that was kind of weird because the internet wasn't really much of a thing until like the mid 90s, right? So I don't know what she was looking up on the computer. At least I think it was, because they didn't really show the screen, but I think that's what she was doing. I could be wrong. So I don't know. I just thought this movie was a lot of fun to watch. And I have to say, some of the dialogue, not all the greatest that I remember it being. I mean, like the Corey Feldman lines in this thing were like, oh my God. I mean, I don't know if that was because they thought that was all he was capable of doing, or that was just like I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I mean, some of his lines were like really bad. That was like the one thing about this movie. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I mean, the rest of it I liked. I mean, Tom Hanks was awesome. Bruce Dern was awesome. Rick DeCameo was pretty awesome. Carrie Fisher was pretty cool. Even though she was more like a side character, she wasn't really part of all the shenanigans that Tom Hanks and the other two were getting involved in throughout this movie. I mean, she didn't really get really into it like towards the end. But like I said before, I had a lot of fun watching this movie, and I was never bored. I never like checked my phone to see what time it was or to see how much time I had left or anything. I just sat here and I watched the whole thing. But I had to go old school on this one because I went to go rent or watch it on one of the streaming services that I have, and none of them had it available. You couldn't rent it anywhere. I couldn't watch it on any streaming service because it wasn't available in my area at the time. I'm like, what the hell is that? You know? So I'm like, what am I going to do? I wanted to watch this movie. So I checked with my younger brother. Now, he's got a collection. You would think that he owned Blockbuster at one point. You know what I'm saying? He's got a lot of videos. So I was able to get a copy of that movie to watch it. And here it is. Now, there's two other movies on here I'm going to probably end up doing videos on also because they're Tom Hanks movies and they're awesome. I figure, why not? I got the DVD. I'll just watch these movies and do a rewatch video on each one of them. So be a lookout for those movies coming up here fairly shortly. The Burbs is a 1989 American black comedy film directed by Joe Dante and written by Dana Olsen, who also makes a cameo appearance. The film pokes fun at suburban environments and their sometimes eccentric dwellers. Plot of the movie is this. Suburban homeowner Ray Peterson is home on a week-long vacation. Late one night, he hears strange noises coming from the basement of his new reclusive neighbors, the Klopeks. Ray and his neighbors, Art Weingartner and Vietnam War veteran Mark Rumsfield, gradually suspect the Klopeks may be ritualistic murderers. The Burbs was filmed entirely at Universal Studios over 10 weeks in the summer of 1988, shot mainly on the Colonial Street set on the back lot in Universal City, California. The street set has a long history spanning over 60 years of movies and television, and serves as the main and only location of Mayfield Place, Cul-de-sac. Director Dante said, as production got underway, I can't think of many pictures since Lifeboat that all takes place in the same area. The Burbs was released in the United States on February 17, 1989. Opened number one at the box office for the weekend with $11.1 million domestically and went on to gross $49.1 million worldwide. The film has received mixed reviews from the critics and fans, but is now regarded as a cult classic. Starring in this movie, Tom Hanks, Bruce Dern, Carrie Fisher, Corey Feldman, Rick DeCameo, Wendy Schaal, Henry Gibson, and Gail Gordon, just to name a few. Currently, The Burbs is sitting with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 54%, with only 39 top critics reporting in. So a little over half of those 39 critics actually like this movie. Now, the last top critic to do a review of this movie was actually a couple weeks ago, and he liked it. He said, I'm a bit bummed to see a rotten score on this movie, so I felt inclined to throw my positive review into the ring. Burbs is a great little flick with a strong cast of neighbors, a simple yet effective premise with enough intrigue to keep you hooked. Now, I gotta agree. I mean, again, I like this movie. Now, I'm not saying this is like the best movie I've ever seen ever, but it's still funny. I mean, I lived on a cul-de-sac a few years ago, and I'm not saying it's just anything like this, but you kind of feel like you're like a little bit in a fishbowl. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody's so so close. I mean, compared to like a regular neighborhood. Maybe that's just me. But however, I mean, I agree with this guy. I mean, this movie is definitely a classic. I love it. I didn't read any like the negative reviews on this. I mean, I'm not saying this is like the best movie ever, but I liked it. Over on the audience side, the Burbs is sitting with a score of 71%, with 50,000 plus fans telling you what they think. So almost 3/4 of those fans like this movie. Now, the last fan to do a review of this movie, other than my video right now, was last week. So that's got to explain what the deal was on Twitter, right? Because that's 2 other reviews that's like barely close together. And both of them like it, because this guy goes on to say that this movie was an 80 cult classic. And I have to totally agree with that. And I definitely have to say this is probably in my top 10 of Tom Hanks movies. You know what I mean? I mean, I thought this movie was hilarious. You know what I mean? It was like simple. You had good characters, good villains, and no multiverse. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, movies nowadays, it's all about multiverse or some kind of time travel or some kind of BS like that as far as that goes. I mean, this was like a simple movie, simple story, and they were kind of trying to mix up genres. It was supposed to be like a comedy, and it was supposed to be kind of almost like a horror type movie and what have you. I mean, because Tom Hanks has pretty much done every single genre movie out there. You know what I mean? Now, with a budget of $18 million and its total box office of $49.1 million, normally I would say it's no shocker that this thing did not get a sequel. But then again, I don't really think you could do a sequel to this movie. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because the story pretty much ends. At the very end, the bad guys get arrested and they get hauled off to jail, and Tom Hanks and his family actually leave the cul-de-sac and go on vacation, right? So I don't really think you could do a sequel to this. I mean, I'm kind of glad that they didn't try. But then again, with $49.1 million, not like you were really killing at the box office and saying, we gotta have a sequel to this movie now. You know what I mean? So it's one of Tom Hanks' classic. It's an 80s classic. It's almost like a 90s classic because it's just on the verge there, you know, because it's 1989. So I don't know, man. All I can say is I love this movie. I can rewatch this movie over and over again and never get bored. You know what I'm saying? So have you ever watched the movie The Burbs starring Tom Hanks? Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? You think this movie is any good? Let me know in the comments down below. And where does this movie rank with you with all the other Tom Hanks movies? Let me know in the comments down below. I mean, this movie's a classic, and that's all there is to it. So let me just think in the comments down below.